recently moved out and got my own place in Austin. The house I moved into isn't anything impressive, it's just a small house appropriate for 1 or 2 people. But right away, I started hearing weird sounds coming from inside the walls. I first heard it in the kitchen, then in the bathroom, but on night 3, I started hearing it in my bedroom. I was sure there was some kind of animal living in my walls. I just had to figure out how to get rid of it. The next morning, I didn't even have enough milk to fill a bowl of cereal. I couldn't believe I hadn't realized I needed more milk. In fact, I seemed to be going through all my food pretty fast. I woke up in the middle of that night to the sound of breathing. Not my breathing, it sounded just like another person breathing. I flipped the lamp on and it stopped. I chalked it up to my mind playing tricks on me. The next day was really hot, so I turned on the AC for the first time. I checked every single vent, and some of them weren't blowing any air. One of them was the vent right next to my bed. I looked through the vent with a flashlight, there wasn't even a duct behind it. It was just the inside of the wall. It seemed like whatever air duct was supposed to be in there had been removed. Unfortunately, I didn't look into the air conditioning system before buying the house, so I didn't know about this. That night, I had to sleep in the heat with no AC, so I was up pretty late, constantly rolling around and flipping my pillow over. Then I started to hear the breathing again, but this time I was fully awake. I knew it was real this time. It was coming from my left. I looked toward the air vent, the sound was definitely coming from in there. I grabbed my flashlight and shined it through the vent. I dropped it and screamed. There was someone's face peering through the cracks of the vent. The first thing I saw were their eyes wide open and glowing. I screamed all the way down the stairs and out of the house. I soon found out there was a dangerous homeless man living in my walls, and he had been eating my food ever since I moved in. I was the only one home one Saturday night in our house in Denver. I was sound asleep when I woke up to hear Siri talking on my phone. I turned it off, thinking it was just a technical glitch, and went back to sleep. An hour later, Siri woke me up again. Now I was getting a little freaked out. Siri was responding to some strange question that sounded like, "What that found for us?" And Siri's response was, "The answer is Thursday, July 4th, 1776. It was creepy as hell, but I still dismissed it as just another glitch. The third time I woke up to Siri speaking, the sentence she was replying to was my full name. Her response was, "Here's the info for my name." At that point, I ran straight to my parents' room, locked the door, and slept in there for the rest of the night. I still wonder if it was really just a glitch. I was home alone playing computer games around 2 a.m. when someone knocked on my window. My head shot around to face the window, but no one was there. It was winter, so my window was shut, and my room was on the first floor of our house in Manchester. I'm not really the confrontational type, so I just shut my blinds to let whoever was out there know I wasn't interested. Enough time passed that I was able to forget about the knocking and get back into my game. Then another steady set of knocks came at the window. I was really uneasy now. Why were they doing this? Why couldn't they just leave me alone? But thinking there was a slim chance they actually needed help, I lifted the blinds and cracked open my window. That was the biggest and most foolish mistake I'd ever made. 2 hands from the darkness outside grabbed the bottom of the window and pushed it all the way up. I started screaming and threw non-stop punches at the hooded man dressed in all black who was trying to enter my room. I grabbed the lamp from my desk and bashed him in the head with it. He fell back outside, giving me the chance to slam my window shut. I watched him run away from our property into the darkness. I have never had a more terrifying experience. I lived way out in the countryside near Birmingham, the kind of place where you have to turn off the paved road to reach your house. I heard something crash onto the roof and then smash into our metal chimney. For the next hour or so, I could hear banging coming from inside the chimney, which should have been impossible since we had covered it for the summer. Then the front door started rattling, as if someone was pulling on it, trying to get inside. I peered through the peephole but couldn't see anything. I finally threw open the door, and then everything stopped and went completely quiet. I was home alone one day during summer break in our house in Portland. I was doing the usual watching movies in the living room when I heard shuffling noises coming from above me. Our living room ceiling is really high, so the attic is the only room above it. I turned the TV down so I could better hear the shuffling noises coming from up there. The attic was connected to my brother Jake's bedroom through his closet. I went to his closet and opened the attic door. The light up there was broken, so I had to use a flashlight. I only made it about 2 steps in before I heard the sound of the weak wooden floors creaking across the attic. Then I heard something brushing against one of the plastic bags on the floor. I jumped out of the attic, slamming the door shut, and called my parents. My dad checked it out when he got home, but he didn't find anything. I'm just glad it's not my room that connects to the attic. My dog Bella and I were home alone in our house in Leeds. I had music turned up loud in my room, but I could still hear Bella barking like crazy at something. As I was leaving my room and walking downstairs, I heard Bella stomping down the basement stairs, still barking. I followed her and turned on the basement light. She was in an attack stance, barking at the closed door to the boiler room. I knocked on the door asking if anyone was in there. Bella was going absolutely crazy at this point, jumping on the door, scratching it, basically trying to break it down. I decided that if something was really in there, I didn't want to see what it was. I dragged Bella by the collar all the way back upstairs and locked the basement door. When my dad got home, I made him check the boiler room. On his way down there, he saw that someone had placed a ladder against the wall by the basement window, and the window had been smashed open. My dad called the police, sounding worried. I didn't know what was going on yet. It turned out Bella was barking at an intruder, and I should consider myself lucky that I didn't open that door. It was very common for me to be home alone at night. I only lived with my dad in our small house in Cleveland, and his work shifts constantly changed from days to nights. This happened when my dad was working night shifts. I would stay up really late on these nights watching movies. It always took me a long time to fall asleep, so after turning off the TV, I'd probably lay there for a good half hour. Then I heard a toy fall over in my closet. It wasn't too suspicious, but it still creeped me out. Then the doorknob to my closet started to wiggle until it finally turned and the door unlocked. I hid under my covers, not making a sound. It was strangely quiet for about 2 minutes, so I finally peeked my head out from under the covers. There was a figure standing right next to my bed, looking down at me. I screamed at the top of my lungs and pressed myself against the wall behind me. The figure looked out the window and then just walked away, out of the room. I stayed in that position for about an hour before checking if he was really gone. The front door was left wide open, so it seemed like he had left. I didn't get a minute of sleep that night. This story happened when I was a 16-year-old girl living in Phoenix. I had a boy named Joey living next door who was obsessed with me. Every time I would go outside, Joey would come outside too, as if he were watching me through his windows, waiting for me. He was 17 and very weird, and he didn't seem to have any friends since he was always home. I tried to give every sign possible that I didn't like this guy, but he wouldn't get the message. So I finally had to tell him straight up that I didn't like him and to leave me alone. The look on his face that day is something I'll never forget. It was the kind of angry look a toddler gives their parents when they can't have a toy, but coming from a 17-year-old, it was much more disturbing. One night, my parents left me home alone to watch the house. I was working on a school project when I felt my bed shift a little bit. I looked under my bed and screamed Joey was laying under there. I ran away while he tried to crawl out from under my bed. I ran to his house and rang the doorbell at least 10 times, telling his parents about it. When they opened the door, Joey still hadn't come out of my house, so I called the police. His parents begged me not to, but I ignored them. The police found him still in my room and arrested him. Apparently, he admitted this wasn't the first time he had hidden under my bed. They also found pictures of me scattered across his room. The most disturbing one was of me sleeping, and it was taken from inside my room. I live in the countryside outside Nashville, and more often than not, I was home alone. We don't have any neighbors close by, so I would usually just sit in the yard and tan on sunny days. There was this one time when the sun was out strong and I was tanning in our yard when I saw somebody standing in the woods, watching me. I sat up, ready to get up and run. "Do you need something?" I yelled. The guy walked out from the woods and over to me, telling me that he lived up the hill and was wondering if I could help him out with a broken water pump. I told him that I was about to head out and didn't have time. It was a lie, of course, but there was no way I was going with him. He walked off back into the woods until he passed a boulder, and I couldn't see him anymore. I was more creeped out than I had ever been in my life, so I folded up my lounge chair and went inside, making sure to lock all the doors and windows. You would think it ended there, but it didn't. About an hour later, I realized I'd forgotten my sunglasses outside in the grass, so I went back out to get them. I made sure the guy wasn't anywhere in sight before going out there. It took me a little while to find my sunglasses, and when I looked up, I saw the guy again. This time, he wasn't in the woods. He was kind of hiding behind our shed so that only half his body was visible. I yelled that I was calling the cops and ran back inside to do just that. The cops came and took down my description of the guy. Fortunately, I've never seen him since. This happened to me when I was really little. I was 7 years old, but I still remember all of it like it happened yesterday. I was sleeping over at my grandma's house in Queens like I always did when I was little. She never learned to drive, so she would constantly be taking long walks everywhere. One day when I was sleeping over, she wanted to walk all the way to the library, which was like 10 blocks away. I didn't want to take that walk. I was a lazy kid, so she went off and told me not to open the door for anyone. My grandma was strict and didn't baby people, so it wasn't unusual for her to leave me by myself at such a young age. Sometime while I was alone, the phone rang. Being a curious little boy, I answered it. It was a man on the other end. I remember he said, "Who is this?" I said, "Danny." "Are your parents home, Danny?" I said, "No." "So you're home alone right now, Danny?" I said, "Yes." "Where are you right now, Danny? Do you know the address?" Somewhere in Queens," I told him. "All right, Danny. Bye-bye now." He hung up. I don't even remember thinking twice about it, but the story didn't end there. I'd say almost an hour later, a knock came at the door. I remembered what my grandma said, so I stayed on the couch. "I see you on the couch, Danny." My little heart sank. I noticed him through the window. He was on the porch, staring at me. He was a very creepy-looking man, all gray and ugly with a fat beard and gut. I told him to go away. "I got some candy in my truck. Come on out, Danny." I ran to the guest bedroom where I slept and locked the door. Moments later, I heard the back door being rattled, followed by banging and thumping as he tried to break it down. By some miracle, I heard the loud voice of my grandmother as she yelled at him to get the hell out of the yard and that she was calling the cops. I watched through the window as the guy took off in his beat-up pickup truck while my grandma tried to get the license plate number. Unfortunately, she didn't remember it, but she still reported him and his vehicle to the cops. My mom never trusted my grandma to watch me again after that, but I still know that if she had arrived even 10 minutes later, God only knows what would have happened to me.